Hi, this is Tony D'Angelo. With respect to my August 12, 2019 interview with Lee Elci on the Lee Elci Show, I apologize for the beginning and my introduction being cut off. I started to discuss Henry Ford and Fordlandia. So with that, we'll pick up the interview.
Have a blessed day. Security.
Many of whom may have Ford trucks and Ford cars. There was an experiment in 1928 by Henry Ford, the founder of Ford Motors, where he founded something called Fordlandia. And Fordlandia was a Brazilian rubber plant. Henry was a little bit upset at the fact that the British controlled rubber, so he said, I'm going to grow my own, and I'm going to create a utopia in Brazil, and I'm going to corner the market and supply my own product, and life is going to be wonderful. So get this. He goes to the Brazilians, and they give him this land. There's free food, free housing, control of the money. In other words, you can't use the money for gambling or liquor or anything like that, and no off-color entertainment. We're all going to sing psalms and hymns, very, very similar to what somebody could do or a politician could do if they had control of this universal basic money scheme. You could argue, back and forth, good, right, wrong, or indifferent. Whoever's got the purse strings is going to do what they want to do.
Right.
And the biggest thing, Lee, was censorship. You can't do anything like that. Now, how could I put it, for a life lesson for the kids again, be it a marriage, be it a job, be it a business relationship, whatever, 2 years is really the, whatever you want to call it, the watershed moment, the exploding point. This thing went almost exactly 2 years, and the Brazilians riot. And the reason they rioted is because they didn't want American hamburgers, so they burned the place down. And for 5, 6, 7 more years, here's Ford trying to put this thing back together, and nothing happens, and finally, the last thing they do is they sell this thing for a $20 million loss. All of those trappings of UBI. More recently, Finland. They had a trial of 2,000 people. And they said, okay, we're going to give you, quote unquote, some government checks, and we'll see what we do.
Right.
And the whatever you want to call it, the upshot of all of this was it was great while it lasted, but now what do? There was no one got out of that thing and started to get a job or do something great with it. And again, it's a wonderful thing when you can use other people's money until it runs out.
Well, so explain to me what happened. So Brazil, he was paying people. So Ford was paying to use that or bought that land, and he was giving people income checks to be on the. How did that? I don't understand how that worked. Explain that to me.
Well, they were trying to manufacture rubber,
right?
And he, in doing this, he handed them a wage, whether they worked or not, and he developed everything around. Right. And
so he paid them no matter what.
Exactly.
Okay, and then they rioted after 2 years. It's unbelievable. It really is.
The 2-year mark, and when you get into it, and I thought of this yesterday. And we touched on the fact of educational grounds or religious grounds or whatever. If you want to take this thing to a higher plane where my head might go, you cannot be in education, people. You cannot be saying I believe in education and be for UBI, because the fundamental point of education is I'm here and I want to go there and I want to sweat the difference.
Right.
You can't do it.
Right.
The other thing is you cannot say you are this great person believing in a supreme being, choose your own supreme being, and believe in universal basic income, because any belief in any supreme being in any one of the great religions of the world, if you want to keep it totally generic, believes that supreme being will give you everything that you do if you are supposed to do. It is a failed experiment before it starts.
Do you think that the politicians who are promoting this, they actually believe this? They deep down, do you think that they're buying into their own BS, or do you think this is just a vote grabber?
I'm so happy you mentioned that, because how could I put it? I think it is, and I think our wonderful little state here is a great example of that. Be you whatever party, it's cowardice, because if you don't start taken the Kool-Aid cup when it's passed along. Your first thought is, what's going to become of me? How can I do right and how can I be right if just about all my voters think this is a good idea? I may not get elected, but I think it's more of a fear thing. I'm just going to throw this out really quickly. Or actually two things. There were times in this country where government money was used for a good purpose. Last night I was doing a little reading on the WPA, which had its faults, which had a lot of things, but a lot of things got built. So there was some good things. And then the Second World War. But the whole thing was, as you were talking about last week, it was incentivizing rather than saying, here's something for nothing. I mean, people talk about, women's rights, the empowerments of women. Look, every single person on my staff is a woman. Half of them are minority. It's like, I love whoever can do the job. That said, World War II was the best time in the world for women, and because there was an incentive for them to do better, and look at the things that women did.
All right, now is there a middle ground here, or is there some place where we could get to the... I'm just saying that actually almost facetiously. I mean, because...
To be fair.
But yeah, obviously I don't want to pay everybody $1,000 a month just because they happen to be a citizen of the country, and I certainly don't want to see anybody starve in the street, but the idea, is there some way...
Sure.
Is there a workfare as opposed... See, workfare as opposed to welfare seems like a solution. Those kinds of things, maybe they can work long term, right?
Yeah, there is a solution, but what you have to do is you have to cut the thing off at the neck. I'll give you one example. In 2015, I was asked to give a submission to, and this sounds horribly egg-headed, and I apologize, the Connecticut State Tax Panel, which was chaired by Republicans, as to some of the things you could do to make this economy finally work and make it better. And my solution was, you have to drop tax rates and you have to incentivize, because when you do that, it's like, you're a ball player, pitcher doesn't have the stuff that day, but if everybody's hitting, the pitcher can stay in the game. Things are brought up by their own definition. Some of my suggestions, a 3% universal tax rate, even on unrealized appreciation, cut it in half and just be done with it. A dollar-for-dollar tax credit to certain charities, food, clothing, shelter, volunteer fire, National Guard, all things we need. Just lower the sales tax, lower the tax on new cars. In other words, incentivize the thing so where people will do things. All of that said, everybody on this panel was promised some sort of acknowledgement. Lee, I never got one. And this is where I just think politicians get like Inspector Renaud in Casablanca, where they're shocked that there's gambling in Casablanca. I mean, come on, people. You got to do something.
So you mentioned taxes real quick. I don't know if we've talked about this. Maybe we can spend a little bit more time down the road on one of our talks. But
sure.
Are you happy with the results of Trump's tax cuts? The left will say it only affected the ultra-rich and upper classes, and the middle class took the brunt again. How do you see that?
Well, I see it. 85% of it, I think, is terrific and is a great thing. And he did exactly the right thing. 15% of it, he listened to the wrong people. And I think that if he tweaked the 15% of it, like the property tax deductions and a couple of things with respect to could have made the charitable deductions better, could have made home ownership more of an incentive to do. That's the part I think where he missed it. But then again, this has happened with every single tax act since as long as I've been around, since 1976. And you usually had a session 1 year, 2 years after that where the Congress got together and fixed things to where they can work. We didn't get that because of the mess we have in Congress. So that's kind of my view.
Right.
It was a great start, but it needs to come farther.
And here's a conversation for the future for me and you, too. I'd like to know, and maybe you can break it down, because I can never seem to figure out, aside from the fact that they all have all these incredible loopholes and all these write-offs, but how does a company like Amazon pay no taxes? How does that happen? How can we let it happen? A
large part of it is companies like Amazon, and believe me, dealing with corporate America, a lot of that might be the censored part of my reality show some days, but a large part of it, these companies make huge capital investments. They buy things, they build things, they improve things. Yeah, they get gimmies. I understand that, and you know my feeling about that. But it's the kind of thing that we do have something in our tax code known as depreciation, which is, you build a building and you're using it for business purposes. You do get to write it off. There are research and development, credits. If you make a sincere investment, believing that they're playing by the rules, you get that back. So it's not like they're just making money and making no investment. They are making jobs. They are doing something where if they weren't doing anything, nothing would happen.
All right, well, we'll have to dive into that a little bit deeper when we have more time. All right, Tony D, again, always a pleasure to chat with him. He is basically, he's about as smart as it gets, so we get him on every once in a while. Fortress Fiduciary Company. Tony, once again, where can people find out more about you?
Oh, believe me, Lee, a stop clock is right twice a day. You can get to me at 203-777-7334 or at fortresstrust@AOL.com. Thanks for having me, and love to chat.
All right, buddy. Thank you, Tony D. Good guy, good stuff, and he brings some interesting stuff to the table, so we appreciate that. And we'll talk to him down the road for sure, again, about different stuff. So, all right, 19 out to the hour of 7 o'clock.